Hello, hello, what is up, Jump fans? We have reached the end of May, so it's time to, as always, go back through the month and reflect on what happened in our beloved weekly Shonen Jump. Overall, May was a very sad month for manga in general. If you're watching this, I'm sure you're aware there was a massive DCMA blitz on manga decks. Something like 1,500 series got taken down. It's really frustrating. It's really quite a shame, If you're savvy, then obviously you've still got access to all of that great content, but just the break in continuity and the destruction of a community that had been built up over years of reading these series together instantly overnight, it's tragic. It's really quite sad. I'll probably get into more depth on this in a manga chat video that I have planned that I'm hoping to make in the next few days as well. But it did make me pretty grateful once again to the existence of the Viz simulpub of Weekly Shonen Jump. Despite all of the chaos that can happen in the world of scanlation and of manga piracy and stuff like that, I have this pillar that, unless Shueisha decides to renege on the deal, is going to just be this consistent source of the latest chapters in a ton of my favorite series. And, that was a big part of why I started the series, is that I just felt so surprised and excited at the opportunity to read the magazine week by week, just like the kids in Japan. I wanted to take advantage of that. I wanted to celebrate that and explore the magazine with that opportunity. And in situations like this, I just kind of reflect on that again and feel all the more grateful. A sad month in manga, but a pretty exciting month in Jump. We only got 3 chapters because of Golden Week, but we did have one new series debut. Let's start there and talk about Otter of the Flame. This is a new manga by the mangaka of Red Hood, which is a series that ran in the early 2020s. Attracted a pretty loyal cult following, but wasn't able to expand that into a large enough audience to get real momentum going in the table of contents, and was axed only after like 18 chapters. But I think a lot of people were looking forward to the return of this mangaka into Jump, seeing what they did next. And I would say this series is both very ambitious in terms of the scope it could have. It has a premise that's simple enough but expansive enough to span tens of volumes if it has the opportunity to, but also seems to be very written with consideration of the potential axe that is always lurking overhead. I don't mean the axe that the Vikings in this series swing, but of course the axe of the editorial board. So what's going on here? First off, it is an actual fantasy world series set in a brand new fantasy world that the author is cooking up from scratch. It is not set in modern Japan, but there's ghosts or exorcisms or whatever, but instead a land of rugged Nordic terrain where a clan of Viking type people has launched this endless bitter war against the Winter Army, which is encroaching on their lands and freezing everything. They have this society of warriors in which Otter is but a child. He's been sent to the front lines to simply help cook. But in a chaotic situation where the Winter Army launches a surprise attack, he bonds with this flame spirit, which gives him the ability to summon and channel flames. Not the most mind-blowingly unique premise, but like I said, something where, there can be all sorts of arcs where they wage war against the Winter Army on one land or another. We have to go through all the different generals of the Winter Army and their various followers and see their takes on all sorts of mythological beasts, drawing from Nordic mythology, but whatever the hell they want. This is the beauty of a fantasy world. You have the responsibility, but also the great power to just build everything the way you like it from the ground up, putting your own spin, your own aesthetics on all these sort of different things. And so far, the series is really nailing that. It feels like they've built up such a unique iconography already. Again, nothing mind-blowingly crazy, nothing unrecognizable, but living in that great space where you are familiar enough to have expectations and hype around, ooh, will we see a wyvern? Will we see a zombie, or the Nordic equivalent of a zombie? Will there someday be a Yggdrasil equivalent? Will there be Nordic gods in the series? You know, getting excited about that by drawing on this sort of cultural pool of references, I think, is such a great space for fantasy series to be in, and something that really genuinely excites me every time. Like I said, it does feel sort of written with consideration of the acts, insofar as it's been very chop efficient. That was the first chapter. We get this whole setup, we get this battle, pretty awesome, establish a few characters, establish our hero, why he's fighting, what he has to protect. In the second chapter, they build out the world a little bit more, tell you about, you know, why this conflict is happening, how long it's been going off, blah, 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 blah. We have the classic sort of power trade-off in the MC, where, yes, he has this awesome power to command flame, which is great against enemies that attack via ice, but he is not powerful himself enough to channel it and use it safely, so he too is getting burned up by using this fire spirit, who of course is anthropomorphized and chats with him and blah blah blah, a Navi type character perhaps. So they say, okay, it's time to go off and get trained, and I was like, wow, that's fast. But it actually mirrors a pattern that I've seen a lot in shonen lately, where essentially it's like you want your MC to be kind of like badass, and to be able to kind of surprise you and do things that you weren't aware that they could do. But you also want to have a setup where in the first chapter, the MC is sort of like weak and feeble. You see them at that kind of low moment, and then the next time you see them, something has changed. Like you see them first inherit the power, but then there's kind of a gap in which some surprises can be sort of built up with plausibility. All sorts of examples of this. One Piece, of course, is a great example. You see the origin of Luffy, in a sense, him and Shanks getting the gum fruit. And then before the series starts proper, there's a time skip of like 10 years. And now you don't really know how strong Luffy is. You don't know what all he's been able to master with the gum fruit. It creates that kind of space of ambiguity. And usually, yeah, they've been setting it up that, oh, okay, so right away you have to go get trained. You have to live up to this potential. We can't have this trade-off kind of hanging over every battle, where it's like, oh no, he's burning himself up in order to save his friends. That's fine, but I think it does get kind of weary. You do want to feel kind of a power fantasy in your MC. You want to be able to see him kick some ass without reservation. So, yep, he's off to a training arc. In the latest chapter, he meets this legendary warrior that he's been sent to train under. Very fun character. He's like bizarrely flaky and airheaded and keeps forgetting what he's saying, keeps forgetting what's going on. Has to be reprimanded by his current student, who's some sort of like witch girl or something. There's a fairly long back and forth about this idea of like, oh, is Otor really a warrior? He's just a kid. Shouldn't he live a peaceful life? This whole idea of like dying in glory and battle, going to Valhalla. You know, that's the fate of warriors, but can we really subject a child to that? Should they not just kind of live out their natural life? This was discussed in chapters 1 and 2 as well. They're really kind of just iterating on this point. And I did sort of feel like, what are we doing here, folks? What it ultimately kind of felt like is getting to an entire chapter's worth before the ultimate idea of, oh, I'm going to tell if you're a warrior by fighting you. Which, again, is pretty cliche, and it's sort of like, oh, okay, well, we knew we were going to get there. Did we really have to have a whole chapter of, like, humming and hawing? Some stuff sort of felt flimsy in that regard. And like I said, I think they're just trying to get all of these beats out of the way as quickly as possible, knowing that, hey, this could only last 18 chapters like Red Hood did. Who knows, it could last even fewer. That has happened. So let's just get to the meat of the story ASAP, because that's what they have the confidence in to hook people and build an audience and stuff. Sure, great. Go for it, do that. Because I also have confidence that when they get into the thick of it, the fantasy world building, the epic battles, the comrades versus a wide variety of evil ice beasts, the potential is off the charts. The ceiling could be very, very high. I think as well, just this sort of like war campaign structure where they're constantly kind of ebbing and flowing the lines of battle, just sort of naturally lends itself to going to new settings and meeting new peoples and meeting new creatures and beasts and stuff, which again is just sort of the meat and potatoes of your fantasy shonen world. So yeah, overall, I was very, very impressed with this. I think it's very smartly written. The theming is great. Always happy to see fantasy series. We've had such a dearth of them for so long. And the art is fantastic. I hadn't read Red Hood before, so I was unfamiliar with Kawaguchi Sensei's game, but I am really, really impressed. The characters are so expressive, the fight scenes are so bold, the conveyance of the firepower is so sick. There's all these sort of like extra narrative structural devices where in chapters where they're talking about like the mythology of their people in panels, they'll depict it as sort of like a storybook, as like the Edda, these ancient sacred Nordic texts they're sort of riffing on and paying homage to. All the character designs are great, just really kind of over the top, really exciting. Really classic shonen stuff. I like the designs of the enemy monsters as well. You can see some of them here reflected on his sword. Again, nothing like so crazy and trippy and weird that you don't know what's going on. You identify what kind of archetype they are, what they're trying to depict, and you're like, cool, that's a neat design for a giant or whatever. So yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I think this and Star of Beethoven have been my most impressed, the most impressed I've been by debuts. Debuts? They're good series. That's my point. Very, very impressed. Very excited for more. I hope it gets a nice solid run. We'll give it an A+. Great start. Moving on to RuriDragon. We got one chapter this month, and this might actually be the last chapter for a while. They announced that the author is once again going on hiatus due to health concerns. This already happened once around when the series started. I think only like 10 chapters in. There was like a long, long break. And then it came back at this very infrequent, inconsistent pace. But I think something even worse happened than just sort of the ongoing health issues that necessitates that slower pace. So once again, the series is taking a long break, which is very unfortunate. I love the series. I think it is very unique within Jump in terms of just how it positions itself, the type of writing, the type of character stories. It's kind of like a true slice of life drama, which Jump doesn't get too often. And I really, really appreciated just how honest it was about these kind of the high school era problems. I felt like it was such a nice investigation of those things, which is a great presence to have in Jump. As an aside, like I really feel bad for this author. I think it must be so frustrating to have a career like this and to be striving to put out this content and to have this critically beloved, widely fan adored series and not be able to deliver it to your fans. You probably have all these ideas cooking in your head. At the same time, I'm like, can we please again push back on this narrative of like those who write manga are on the tier of like sweatshop workers in the third world? This idea of like it's the most strenuous, unfair, brutal job one can have. I think it's just such like a talking point that's been cemented into Western discussion of manga, such that I feel like people are consuming manga as this sort of like weird guilty pleasure where they're like, I can't support how it was made, but at the end of the day, I just gotta read One Piece. So here we have Weekly Shonen Jump, the most popular manga magazine in the world, which is notorious for having a very high bar of what they'll publish in terms of cutting things the instant they stop getting popular, which is pretty brutal, but I would argue is kind of the reason the magazine has succeeded for so long and how it's produced so many gigantic globe-spanning hits and innovated so many genres and blah 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 blah. I could go on for days and days and days about this. But let's just drive this home. This is somebody who created something very good that everybody liked, and to support those ends, they have been able to take long extended hiatuses. They have been able to publish on their schedule, putting out on average 1 to 2 chapters per month. Where is this hypothetical slave driver? Where is the sweatshop in which they are hypothetically imprisoned and being barked at over a bullhorn to draw more pages, draw more pages? I'm not trying to downplay the fact that drawing manga on a weekly basis is very, very hard, and that having a weekly series is like this insane creative work that is really unmatched in its demands and most other mediums. But there is a combination. They can take breaks. Not just this author, but they all take breaks when they need to. There's holidays. We got Golden Week this month. That's why there's only 3 chapters, because everybody got a break. Like, there's so many jobs where that's just not true. There's so many jobs that are just way worse than that, where you would be thrown into an alley and said, okay, well, we can replace you if you said, I'm gonna need to take a long break from my output. Even jobs in, like, Western media and stuff, in the entertainment industry, I think are a lot more harsh about accommodating these sorts of things. Okay, anyways, this is a whole rant. I don't know, it just frustrates me, this, like... You guys know how any job in Japan is? Do you know what the life of a typical Japanese salaryman is like? Don't you think that they would rather be working the same hours, getting brutalized the same, putting their body through all that strain and stress, and be making manga instead of, like, fucking marketing reports on the auto industry? Like, I don't know, it feels like at a certain point it goes beyond, like, compassion for the manga artist into this just sort of, like, weird white savior enlightenment, this feeling of, like, if only they knew the wonderful working conditions of the Western world, surely the manga would be better, which is totally unfounded. Anyways. This whole thing frustrates me. Let's talk about RuriDragon itself. Unfortunate it's going on hiatus after this chapter, because this chapter was pretty cool, pretty beyond cool. It was cold. She has recently developed the ability to generate frost and freeze things and just lower the ambient temperature. One of her many draconic powers. This is kind of the guiding arc of the series, is that she suddenly blossoms into a new power and has to deal with it, and it creates all these sorts of issues at first, but then she embraces it and blah 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 blah. Excuse me, we're kind of running through that again. But now with frost powers, it had one really cool scene where she freezes the school pool. Pretty badass, but nothing too crazy. At some points, I'm like, I wish this series leaned more into the draconic power craziness. There was that scene where she diverts a whole typhoon, but it just happens off screen. We don't get to see her do it. And I just think the art in the series is great, and it would be cool to see that sort of stuff depicted. But at the same time, I think tonally the series kind of wants to be very down to earth. And even though these crazy things are happening, and the premise of her being a dragon is, of course, very crazy, everything is sort of, like, moderated down to this sort of day-to-day slice of life level. So I get it. But yeah, pretty cool. Good stuff. Can't wait for it to return. But goodbye for now, RuriDragon. I'll give you a B+. Alright, next, let's talk about the Super Psychic Policeman Chojo. 3 very fun chapters this month. Starting off with the return of his partner Ponfer's grandpa, the dojo master who just radiates this insane aura of strength. I like how even in gag comedy series within Jump, there are ideas of, like, power scaling, and this guy surely sits at the top of the pyramid when it comes to Chojo. He has totally misinterpreted a situation where Ponfer is trying to find somebody that could run the dojo on days where she's on patrol. Because the grandpa is thinking of stepping back a little bit, getting old, blah, blah, blah. But the grandpa misunderstands this and thinks that she's bringing him potential candidates for her to marry. And of course, he has a very strong reaction to that. He's very protective of his granddaughter and has all of this crazy qualifications test to be a suitable partner. Lots and lots of fun. And the latest chapter was a very standard gag comedy classic. Let's all go to the pool. It's in the structure of let's see how everybody's doing at the pool. We just check in on all the characters. They do their shtick, but in swimsuits with pool jokes. Very, very straightforward, very silly, sure. It was the chapter in the middle, the second chapter of the month, that I found actually quite transcendent for this series. So, of course, the premise is that he is the super psychic policeman. He can use telekinesis and read people's minds and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of chapters do not really make mention of this fact, and even fewer really touch on the fact that this is, like, crazy and that his life is so abnormal and so strange. But here, they really hone in on that aspect with a truly unprecedented amount of sincerity. They go to bring in this other psychic that used to be a policeman who retired because he was just so overwhelmed by the constant barrage of other people's thoughts, and he started kind of having like a dissolved ego where he couldn't tell if the feelings he was feeling were his own or were just being picked up from other people. Genuinely kind of like touching and tragic, and a very novel exploration of what these powers would actually be like. I don't know if I've seen too many other stories about psychics, especially like mind reading type psychics, that touch on this ability of like, what if you couldn't turn it off? Like, what if the feed of other people's thoughts was just a constant presence in your mind? How would that wear you down? Blah, blah, blah. It was really nice. Just this kind of shockingly sincere exploration of this character. With the few jokes that they pepper in being really funny in their juxtaposition and contrast. For example, he talks about how he started worrying that when he felt like he needed to poop, maybe that was just somebody else nearby that needed to take a poop, and then he could never figure out when he actually needed to poop. That's funny. And the contrast made it all the funnier. And then it ends with like a really cool kind of character revelation where she's wondering, why isn't Chojo kind of succumbing to this? Why isn't Chojo also in this bad condition? And she realizes it's because Chojo has all of his crazy otaku hobbies. That he's obsessed with gaming and model kits and collector card games and mobile games and all this stuff. It's like those things that are drawing his mind on a path of like ego and obsession, and so he's not getting crowded out by other people's thoughts. And I just think that sort of like character reinterpretation, that sort of character reflection, that you have this sort of running gag and, you know, chapter setup material of him having all these different obsessions, but in the end, that's actually like not just the core part of who he is, but the reason he's not going insane. Really, really good stuff. I'll give it an A- for the month. Very strong month for the series. Next, let's talk about the Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. The last few months, I have just constantly been talking about how I think this series is heading for its super climax, so to speak. We have what appears to be the final arc where all good guys fight all bad guys. It's been going on for a while. It seems like everybody's kind of having their final character moments in their final battles. And after that, we're just going to wrap up the whole thing. It's a shame because I really do love this series, and I think it had all of the raw materials, all of the ingredients to run for a very, very long time. But it did get a solid year or so. And this ending is delivering on all fronts. There's nothing I can complain about. We're getting to see all of our characters fight awesome battles against all sorts of awesome demon lords. fine. And in this month, I mostly felt the same way, but there were a few tiny little threads that they just sort of dangled. The thinnest of threads that I felt like, if very carefully pursued, could in fact lead to a longer series. So, for example, the first chapter had Kurogane, this badass girl who's fighting one of the demon lords. In fact, she's fighting Ashura Roth, who's like the lord of all demon lords. She manages to do pretty good against him, in part because of her contract with an angel. And I was like, whoa. Has this been brought up before? The existence of angels and presumably archangels and God, like the Judeo-Christian God, perhaps. All sorts of things can be implied from that. They just kind of throw it out there. And you're like, wait, this potentially a lot more world building here than we'd recognized. Or maybe they had mentioned it before, and this is kind of like the payoff of that world building element they had mentioned. But either way, it felt like it was kind of leading you forward. Like, how rude is it to say, you've made a contract with an angel, and then the series ends and you never get to meet an angel. So, this one little thread. The fight overall was great. Kurogane is a great character, great design. After she loses, inevitably she loses, big boy Kiyoshi steps in, starts fighting Ashura Roth as well. Ashura Roth, of course, had fought him before to kind of a standstill and was like, get stronger, let's fight again, this is fun. And I felt like, again, a little sliver of a thread of potential continuation where they essentially just do it again. Because he keeps saying things about Kiyoshi's potential and how happy he is to have waited for Kiyoshi to grow. And he's speculating on how much stronger Kiyoshi will become in the future, which easily could be like a sort of, at the end of the series, Kiyoshi, he's the bestest, but he's still gonna get the betterer. But it could also hint that they're gonna kind of run it back, and he's gonna go, it's still not our time to fight, I'm withdrawing my army, we're gonna get stronger this time, and let's have another 100 chapters. Wouldn't that be great? Because again, great fight, great character designs, great move names, all of the movie homages and title drops and stuff. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Please, please, find one of these shining golden paths to continuation. And then in the latest chapter, we got Hijiri, our necessary archetype of a badass, aloof swordsman who can summon all sorts of legendary blades, going up against the first-ranked demon lord, the second strongest after Ashura Roth. This is a fight that had been kind of happening in the background for a while, but now we're getting the full focus on it. It was sick nasty. Maybe my favorite fight of the month. Pretty nonsensical. The demon gets drunk and you think he's going to be like a drunken master, but it seems that he is actually just drunk and like worse at fighting and keeps getting confused and slurring his words and stuff. But the fight itself, pretty badass. Again, very straightforward. Good guy versus bad guy. Let's get our story beats. Let's get our minor flashback, etc. So yeah, the series is firing on all cylinders. This last arc has been great. If this really is it, I couldn't complain. It's going out on a high note. I just wish it wasn't going out at all. We'll give it an A for the month. Very solid. Next, let's talk about the other Exorcist in Jump. Not the ultimate Exorcist, but perhaps the... What's the opposite of ultimate? The minimal Exorcist of Jump. Last month, I got very upset about this series and ranted about how it was corrupting the youth of Japan or something nonsensical like that. And I wouldn't say that this month was a return to form by any rate, but it was an improvement. So they set up this thing, like, again, this series is half battle shonen, half harem light novel, which is like putting turd in chocolate. You can blend it as nicely as you want. It's not making the chocolate better. And they had set up this thing where it seemed like they were kind of just too lazy to go through the normal beats of a rom-com. So they're just like, oh, Gakko, it seems like you're better at fighting when you're protecting someone precious. So why don't you get a girlfriend, and then you'll have something even more precious to protect, so you'll fight even harder. And as I said, of course, this is a harem, so there's like 8 girls interested in him. And he has to choose which one. And the last few chapters have just been a barrage of this. The girls cycling through. He meets his senpai's mom. Remember she had a fiance who died? Do you remember that? That was like a major plot point. And then they fought the demon or whatever that killed him. Remember? It was like very emotional. No, not really, but it was meant to be. And now it's like he goes to meet her mom, and her mom is like giddily chatting away and doing the whole like embarrassing my daughter shtick, harping on about how much she likes him and blah blah blah. And I'm like, she was engaged to be married to a man that she loved with her entire heart like 2 years ago. Isn't this a little glib? It just really felt like they didn't know how to write characters. And instead of like doing kind of the bare minimum of having like one panel that acknowledges that, they just didn't do anything. And then, again, just this like very disrespectfully basic setup. Oh, there's a festival. We're all gonna go to the festival together, and we're gonna take turns going around the festival with you, and then you have to pick a girl by the end. It's just like stupid as fuck, man. And it feels like the author, they're like making a joke out of the whole thing. Like, isn't this meant to be an emotionally climactic moment in the series where Gaku finally embraces his feelings towards one of the girls and makes his choice? Or at least you're meant to think that will happen, and then they fake you out, the harem classic, and he doesn't make a choice. But at least there should be some sort of tension where you think it might actually happen. But instead it's just like gag comedy level nonsense of each girl getting like spammed and getting like 5 panels each where their ardent worship of Gakko is treated like a joke. And I feel like there's just no chance for any sort of emotional connection. Like, I just don't know how I would begin to have it. And I get that it's meant to be comedic, and part of me is just like, oh, well, it's inappropriate for it to be comedic at this time, because we're meant to like take this seriously, I think. But at the same time, it's just also not funny. Like, the jokes are just like not funny. The punchline of every joke is lol, the girl likes him. And it's like, is that funny, or are we supposed to like empathize with her? I don't know. I again, what bothers me so much about these light novel harems, in contrast to like a Jump rom-com harem, is that it seems like they just keep lowering the bar on the MC and lowering the bar for you, the reader, to feel connected to the MC. So, for example, the final moment in this month is like all of the girls like climbing onto him and like hugging him from various directions. And it's just nonsense. Like, it's not how human beings behave, and it's really disrespectful to all of the characters involved. And Gakko, of course, is just like, touching me. And it's like, oh, like, that's the limit of imagination that a harem light novel reader has. They can't really imagine being decisive or doing something like romantic or flirty or anything. They just want the girls to literally throw themselves at him. And all they're expected to do is just kind of like stammer and be befuddled. And it's like, yeah, I bet I would be befuddled and stammer out some words and be really embarrassed in that situation too. I'm just like Gakko. Maybe someday I'll be in a situation where I'm at a festival and a bunch of girls in yukata climb all over me. It's pathetic, man. It's like the pathetic wish fulfillment. You can have wish fulfillment that's aspirational. And I think Jump is all about that. It's about power fantasies. It's about wanting to be cool and badass and popular and save your friends and build unshakable bonds. Go to nationals. Beat the hell out of a villain. Woo a cute girl with your consideration and your honesty at just the right moments. At least a feeling that you could be honest, that you're trying to be honest. It's power fantasies that I feel like genuinely, this maybe sounds sad, but if you read Jump and you're like, I want to be like the protagonist, that's going to make you like a better person. I think that is like one of the hallmarks of Jump that has been true for years. Not in every series. There are subversions. There are, anti-heroes in our MC roles. But generally speaking, when there's like a clear path to like this character's ideals are helping them make the world a better place, why don't you, the reader, inherit those ideals, you impressionable youth? And this series, just, I don't think has any of it, man. It's a pathetic fantasy where he does like jack shit. All he does is go, I'm willing to die for you. That's not actually hard. To just imagine that in that scenario you would say, I'm willing to die for you. It's not that hard to imagine that in the scenario where all the girls are climbing all over you, you would go, oh. It's not hard to imagine that if a super magical, powerful, ancient being gives you a whole bunch of powers, that you would then use those powers like, well, it's not Deku cleans up the entire fucking beach even though he's a scrawny little kid and then gets a power-up boost that shatters all of his limbs when he tries to use it, and he like scrapes his way up to the top. No, it's Nue says, I choose you because you're a special boy. And so you get to do everything. And yeah, you got to have a training arc every now and again. Actually, most of the series. But that's mostly about you sleeping in the same bed as a girl with big boobs. And the training is just sort of like, oh, I realized I can use Xenoblade twice. I can use Xenoblade darker. Whoa, shit. Oh, now I'm strong. Like, it's just so disconnected from anything that anyone would actually be able to aspire to in real life. Bro, this is a magazine that regularly, currently features series about high school athletes doing their best to succeed in national tournaments. That's shit that real Japanese high schoolers are doing. How much further away can you get? Anyways, we'll give it a D-. It wasn't as bad as last month. So good for you. Alright, let's talk about Blue Box. As I said, a great high school sports series. Sports, rom-com, blended together. Perfect combination. Doing both of them excellently. Stellar examples of both. Maybe my favorite rom-com that Jump has ever run. I love it. And this month, again, very, very good. Much more focus on the romance. Not even romantic comedy, but just straight up romance. Very sweet, very sincere, very sentimental chapters. We start with the second half of their date, which was very fun and had a good sense of kind of the chaos of running around looking for her lost bag, running into some people. I think I like series that celebrate a sort of urbanism. And I think just the fun of them going to all these different locations, stores, cafes, restaurants, the movie, in their little date, and just kind of emphasizing the joy and freedom they have. I loved it. I just love that sort of vibe. And then ending with Taiki going up to Chinatsu's room. She's living on her own now. Something lewd could happen, something, taking steps forward in their physical intimacy. But I think they handled it like really, really well. They focused on an emotional intimacy. You know, the series has never been fan servicey. It's never been like tantalizing or whatever. I think it just has like a good, honest depiction of the conflict between shyness and eagerness and desire and anxiety and all that nice stuff. And again, this chapter I think just really emphasizes that. They go through all sorts of pictures they'd taken because they've decided to make this little photo album of their time together in high school. So sweet. It feels like they're heading towards kind of the super climax of the relationship arc. Climax is maybe the wrong word. I just mean the ultimate final arc of the series will clearly be Taiki competing in badminton at nationals. So it's like we have to kind of hit all the beats of the relationship plotline before that. And this is, I don't want to be so glib as to say, oh, it's checking off the boxes, but it's depicting all of the scenes that you'd kind of expect to see at the accumulation of a rom-com series, and doing just a really great job of all of them. The latest chapter had this really nice sentimental theme of Chinatsu truly moving out of the house, moving all her stuff, starting to live in the new apartment. Again, just remembrance. I love that in these moments, Chinatsu isn't just focused on her relationship with Taiki, but they really do highlight, like, his whole family took her in. They did so much for her. She feels so much gratitude for them. She really loves his mother and father as well. Like, just making time for that relationship, even though it isn't, like, the focus of the series, I think is something really, really strong about this series. That it's holistic in that sense. And then, you know, with this sort of bittersweet feeling of loneliness, where she is really grasping the fact that she will be living on her own now. She says, it's going to take me a while to get used to this feeling of loneliness. Boom! We find out that Taiki's class is going on a multi-day class trip. And it's like, well, there's your loneliness. And I think this will be kind of the final boss of this whole relationship aspect. Not that I think it's going to be anything so melodramatic as, oh, they get into a stupid fight or there's some stupid misunderstanding or something like that. But I think it'll be kind of like the test and proof of just this whole general idea that they're living bifurcating lives now. They're never going to have the automatic easiness of going to high school together as a way to connect. Instead, it's going to be this more effortful thing for a long time until maybe they live together. The relationship is changing, it's evolving, it's growing, and there's going to be growing pains associated with that. And I think, you know, if they can really build up that sort of feeling over the class trip arc, but have it pay off in the end of being like, but this is still worth it, I still love you, I know we can make this work, be very beautiful. That's going to be great. And then probably nationals, and then probably the series ends. Great series. So we'll give it an A+ for the month. Very, very happy with everything that's happening. I think this is just, again, probably the best rom-com the Jump has ever run, at least that I've read. It just takes itself so seriously. It takes the characters so seriously. So much respect for the characters. Unlike the series we talked about just before, that makes the jokes, makes the feelings of the characters into a joke time and time again. Here, they just want to emphasize how lovely and sweet and joyful it is to love someone this much. Okay. Next, let's talk about Kill Blue, going from blue to blue. Series has been weird lately. Again, the series, for its entire run, never really seemed to be sure of what it wanted to be, what it wanted to do, and just kind of stumbled around through a variety of settings and genres and cliches and characters and blah, 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 blah. The latest whole adventure is the Home Ec Club battling off against the student council, with Ogami's eventual goal to be the student council president. The whole setup is so convoluted. Clearly they just wanted to have these student council characters, have them be like super elite badasses, and square off against Ogami and his friends, and they've chose an extremely convoluted route to get there, but whatever. That's what they want, that's what we're doing. And they suddenly decide, oh, okay, well, we're gonna shut down the Home Ec Club unless you can beat us in a battle, And Ogami goes, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna choose airsoft because I'm a hitman." Well, he doesn't say because I'm a hitman, but because he's a hitman, he's really good at shooting and stuff. So we're gonna do an airsoft battle. Okay, I'm confident I can win. Oh, but the student council is also like aware that there's hitmen that have infiltrated the school, and they're doing their best to expel all the hitmen, and they suspect that Ogami is a hitman. And it's like, wow, you guys are bad at your job because there's been multiple hitmen on many occasions living right under your noses. But whatever, he's suddenly very, very afraid of that. Uh, so he's like, oh, okay, so now I have to pretend to be bad at airsoft, even though they already know I'm good at airsoft. Now I have to pretend to be bad at airsoft. So I got to train the home ec club to be good at airsoft. And again, it's like they clearly just want to do shtick where the home ec club gets super badass and goes through his brutal training and then are all super good at airsoft, and that's like a humorous juxtaposition. And again, it's like this super Rube Goldberg convoluted setup for that. And then we get there, and it's fun. It's fine. And you're like, yeah, okay, that is funny. And the airsoft battle now has begun. Not really that interesting yet. But there's maybe potential. I don't know. We'll see. It's like something at least. I enjoy this series most when they kind of just get to the thing and not when they're doing all of this nonsense to try to justify the thing. I think it would work a lot better for me if it was just nonsensical vignettes, like a gag comedy where the characters just warp into a situation for no reason. But once they're in those situations, it can be pretty good. So we'll give it a B. As I said, the airsoft battle, not too interesting yet, but it's just heating up. Could be fun. The student council characters, not that interesting yet, but could be good. We're just getting into them, so we'll see. Alright, next we got Hima-ten, which despite this very revealing cover, actually was quite cute and wholesome and nice this month. I feel like the stupid virus that infects a lot of Jump rom-coms has been pushed away, perhaps due to the positive influence of Blue Box and the receding influence of Sid Craft and Nue's Exorcist. Again, just taking the characters' feelings seriously and not making them into jokes and gag comedy fodder. So in the last month, we introduced a new character, this girl Terasaka, who becomes aware of this whole kind of secret crush situation, Hima having feelings for Imori. She herself is a super fangirl of Hima, but she's trying to keep that secret. It's a good little setup, you know. So we started off with a follow-up on that, where Terasaki is like trying to vet Imori as a potential suitor for her Oshi. She grasps this whole situation. There's more stuff with the little kitten. It's all very cute. It's all very nice. And again, they're treating Hima's feelings seriously, and they're kind of integrating them into her character in a way that feels honest and like compelling and interesting. And you want to see how she's going to kind of reconcile having the lifestyle that she has with her crush on Imori and her support of Imori's crush on Kanae-san and Kanae and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's a complex love polygon sort of thing, but they're really trying to be like, okay, how is she going to navigate that? It's nice. Then we start heading into a cultural festival arc where Kanae is recruited by her friends to do an idol show during the concert because she's so cute, but she can't sing. There we go. Great. Classic. They go around trying to promote the cultural festival in their little shopping street area. Very cute, fun setting. While discussing this idea, Imori and Kanae. She, of course, harbors a secret crush on him as well, which she does not know is actually reciprocated. And they're always trying to navigate this tension of wanting to compliment one another, but not really knowing how those compliments would be received. Which, again, is a little contrived and is like a rom-com staple of constantly regressing any potential progress. The characters not being able to get the words out can sometimes be very frustrating. But here I think it's just kind of dealt with honestly and sincerely, and with this very wholehearted approach of, well, yeah, that is tough. It's tough to put your feelings out there. Very nice, very nice. And then in the latest chapter, we get into the full swing of the cultural festival. Hasn't actually started yet, but it's sort of dominating the conversation with this idea that Hima should not stick out too much. She should not become a major spotlight because she's famous, because she has this makeup brand, and it would just create too much chaos at the cultural festival. Which, the characters kind of debate about whether or not that's fair, which I think in itself is fair. Like, that debate is fair, and it's kind of interesting to me. And basically now it's sort of like the roles are reversed, where normally Hima is this sort of glittering star, but now Kanai and Kano will be the center of attention, and she has to kind of play the role of just a supportive friend. So that'll be interesting. I think this whole cultural festival arc could be really good. I love cultural festivals. I just think the variety of things happening and kind of all the cliche scenes you can run through and all the climactic moments that can emerge, one of the best settings for an arc in Slice of Life. So very excited for that. We'll give it a B for the month. Very solid stuff. Can't wait to see more. Ooh, baby, let's talk about me and Roboco. I love this series. Great gag comedy. I hope it runs for a million years in Jump. It is currently the second longest running series. And it's like, the floor is very high, I think, for a Roboco chapter. There's very few that I consider total misses. And then the ceiling is like unfathomably high, because just the whole premise can get so funny, can get so stupid. And Roboco as a character just has so much potential. And this was in display very well at the start of the month in the first chapter, where Roboco gets herself tied into knots because she thinks that she must be the top heroine in Jump, the #1 girl character in Jump, the heartthrob of all Jump readers. And she just has this long argument with Bondo where they talk about every other heroine in Jump right now and how they stack up with Roboco. It's very, very funny. And I love, again, something I love about Jump is just that it is one magazine. You open it and all your friends are here. And I think having series, gag comedies that break the fourth wall and discuss that and do tributes to other series and talk about what's happening in other series in the magazine, to have a character that reads Jump in Jump and talks about what's happening in Jump is so fun to me. It just seems like such a celebration of this amazing magazine that has produced so many iconic series and has many iconic series running in it right now, in parallel, in every week, appearing pages apart from each other. Beautiful. So yeah, very, very fun. I really, really like the part where he brings up Nami, and he's like, surely you're not better than Nami. Let's run down the list of Nami's accomplishments, both in One Piece and then the accomplishments of One Piece as a series. And then Roboco just goes like, yeah, okay, I can't beat Nami. Yeah, of course. There's no way. I'm happy being #2. Great chapter. Very, very fun. And then at the end, boom, the alternate timeline Robocos appear. They haven't appeared too often. Robocos from different genres of manga. The science fiction Roboco, the rom-com Roboco, the Showa era gag comedy Roboco. They show up to set up an actual plotline, multi-chapter plotline, also very rare in Roboco. All of this is being done in service, I think, of the movie coming out. Just taking advantage of people's attracted attention, increased attention, whatever. Attracted attention. I guess that makes sense. They kind of like sweeps week, because they gotta do some crazy stuff with the movie being in theaters. So the other timeline Robocos appear and say that another squad of Robocos from yet other genres are coming to kill Kagurabachi, because that's the canon event in all me and Roboco series is that Kagurabachi dies, which of course is like a little Into the Spider-Verse thing, you know, the Uncle Ben has to die in every iteration of Spider-Man. It's great. There's a lot of really fun jokes with those Robocos appearing. This insane page turn joke that I had never seen before, where Showa era Roboco peels back the page to see what's happening on the next page. That I've seen before a bunch of times, but then in the later page, it's like that part of it is missing because she like opened the window and you can see through the hole she created to the page two before, but you see it from the back, like you see it in reverse shot of the panel. And I was just like, whoa. I sent it to a friend of mine who's also a big manga fan. He recently did a panel on manga paneling. I never realized how funny that is. But basically, he gave a talk at a few anime conferences about, you know, how the flow of panels on a page can convey different action and expectation, and how there's a whole language around paneling, and also a discussion of kind of unique paneling techniques and where they emerge and blah, blah, blah. So for a while now, I've been sending him any sort of example of interesting paneling I can find. And I was like, get a load of this. Have you ever seen this one before? He suggested trying to model it in 3D so you can really take advantage of seeing through the hole and stuff. I was like, man, yeah, they're cooking. They're cooking. And then the evil alt-timeline Robocos show up. There's like cartoon Roboco, like Western cartoon. And then American superhero comic Roboco. There's shoujo manga Roboco. There's live action Roboco, which is just photos of her voice actor. And there's 5. What was the 5th one? Anyways, they're all really good. They're all really funny. Lots of great jokes and stuff there. They square off. They start fighting. In the latest week, they just have 1v1 fights between the two Roboco squads. Great jokes in all of them. Especially like the gag comedy fighting and Roboco initially beating up her own VA, and then her VA saying, if you keep fighting me, I'm going to stop voicing you. Roboco instantly succumbing. All sorts of stuff packed with jokes, gag comedy par excellence. You know, the power of running for over 200 chapters and just building up this repository of jokes. And then in an instant, like, adding so many with this whole new squad of all timeline Robocos and all of their associated jokes. Blending it all together into this, like, unfathomably rich and varied smoothie of comedy. Oh, man. They were cooking. And then it's not over yet, because at the end of the latest chapter... Did I drop my... What the hell? Wouldn't I have heard a noise? Okay, I've left you in suspense. At the end of the latest chapter... What the hell? I'm fiddling with this tube and this Sharpie. At the end of the latest chapter, Kagurabachi fucking dies. They blow the top of his head off in a Chainsaw Man parody. What? So there's more to come. It could be another awesome month of Roboco next month. I can't wait to see the movie. I gotta see the movie. Please bring it to Canadian theaters for just me to go see. I do not know who the hell else would be in the audience. We're giving it an S this month. The highest grade that Roboco has gotten for sure. I think it got an S- one other month, but still. Good shit, Roboco. Alright, next let's talk about Ichi the Witch. Which is itself embedded deep within an exciting arc. We've hit the climax of that arc. As I predicted, it's just kind of a straight up double battle. Ichi is fighting Gokuraku, who is brainwashed by tragedies and this like insane vision of hell, reliving all the painful suffering that both him and his sister went through. Meanwhile, Des is fighting the giant Baku itself. And of course, the logic of this series is you can't just fight a magic and kill it. You have to appease it by completing its trial. So the magic is like, hey, guess what? This is actually the trial. It's a little contrived. And I think this whole idea of like you just have to do an arbitrary task for the magic just sort of necessitates a lot of like weird plot holes where it's like, okay, but like why? Or like can't you just come up with a trial that's like literally impossible and then you're invincible? Whatever. The point is we get to the fights. That's what the setup is for, and the fights themselves are good. Always like awesome choreography in the series. I liked that the spider power that Ichi gets at the very start of this arc comes back. And most of the month is just these fights playing out. At the end, we go into Gakuraku's mind, seeing the horrible visions that he has to live through, and feeling just this faint sense of Ichi kind of reaching out to him to try to pull him out of this despair. And I'm like, alright, I can see where this is going to go from here. It's all quite simple. It kind of seems like the manga itself sees this arc as more complicated than it is. In the latest chapter, they started off with kind of the One Piece classic of showing like a diagram of the setting and where all the fights are taking place. But it was like a very, very simple diagram with only 4 things labeled, and 2 of those are like not really plot lines, and the other 2 are happening in basically the same space. So I was a little like, huh? Seemed a little unnecessary, but whatever. It's a good ambition to have, to write bigger arcs, more complicated arcs that will necessitate those sort of things in the future. I also like that Des summoned this badass giant dragon to fight the Baku. That was sweet. She's calling for backup as well, so we could see some more elite witches, which is always exciting. Yeah, good stuff, solid stuff, nothing mind-blowing. This arc is just sort of progressing as it ought to. My vision for this series, what I hope this series would be, is quite bifurcated from what it's actually become. But that's okay, because I'm quite liking this too. Alright, we'll give it an A. Moving right along to another series that I absolutely loved from the start, that is really bifurcating from my expectations, but has also landed in a place where I think, nah, this is still good. Star of Beethoven. The pacing is really bizarre in the series. We just had a sudden week-long time skip where our 2 protagonists, Beethoven and Yaso, have completely fallen out of touch after an argument about Yaso's playing. Yaso encounters a friend of his from Music Academy who's like a very successful pop musician. She's having a really hard time writing music. She wants Yaso to perform a piano part for her new album. I think it well conveys like the desperation she feels to put out pop hits. The whole thing has this like nice kind of weird spaciness that oddly enough kind of reminds me of like the last few episodes of Evangelion, where Yaso is sort of like Shinji, just kind of wandering around, not really sure of what to do. People kind of need things from him, but he's just kind of at his wit's end or whatever. And then, yeah, he performs the piece she ultimately writes. There's this whole thing where her producers are like, we should get someone famous. This random kid isn't gonna do a good job. And we can't sell records based on his name. Oh shit, we heard him perform. Oh, he's actually so good. We were wrong. We were humbled. We don't need a more famous person after all. And it wasn't as trite as that. It wasn't so obnoxious, obviously. But that plotline in general, I think, is kind of trite, you know? Like, it just seems so unnecessary. The series was doing much more interesting things than that. And then another kind of strangely uninspired plotline of these secret agents trying to track down the resurrected Beethoven. It's odd that I just said that was a quite obvious plotline. It sounded insane as I said it. But suddenly they kind of catch up and kidnap Yaso, and that whole plot line is forced into the forefront. And again, it's like, I don't really know where this is going yet. I'm not really happy that it's happening. I would have much rather the series kind of stayed about piano, stayed about the tutelage of Beethoven, of this kind of adrift student, about him reclaiming his place in the world of competitive piano, all that stuff. Instead, it's become this crazy thing, whatever. So he gets kidnapped, he's interrogated. There's this kind of running gag that he just keeps getting away pretty easily, but then they just catch him again even more easily. Just kind of funny. Then they're like talking to him about this idea of like, isn't it crazy that Beethoven can come back to life? We're not writing that off. There's only kind of one instance that people accept of somebody coming back to life, and that's Jesus. And they show a panel of Jesus, and I was like, what is going on here? Really, really crazy. No idea where that's going. It shows a scene of their patron, the person that's sending them out to try to find Beethoven and find this ring of resurrection. And the whole time I'm just like, what? Like, what is this building to? Where is this going? When will we get back to the piano? Will we get back to the piano? Is the series going to end soon? I think that's very possible, and they're just kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff at once as a final desperate grasp to try to get some plot line that people latch onto. And then Beethoven gets captured too, so it's like all of that was kind of for naught. The whole chapter was about Yaso trying to like lead them away from Beethoven and protect him. Even though they're having this fight, he still obviously cares about him. And then they're like, oh, we just caught him anyways. It's like, what? So, I don't know. We'll see what happens next. It's not like I'm disliking this series. I'm just a little disappointed because it was such a pure and unique and powerful piece right from the get-go. And now it seems to be aping pop melodies for a chance at radio play, to use a kind of painful analogy there. So we'll give it an A. Now, oh boy, let's talk about Sid Craft. This one is definitely ending soon. I don't know if it's ever been more obvious to me, a scenario where an author has a lot of kind of far-flung plot lines that they're planning on developing over years, and I think given the success of We Can't Steady, of Bokuben, the author quite reasonably expected to have a long run in Jump once more. I think the premise was good too. Like, the premise has a lot of potential for just these episodic mysteries. You have an episodic mystery, maybe it ties into some greater conspiracy, maybe you have some romantic progress, and then on to the next one. You really could do that for years. I thought they had all the pieces in place, but it never really got off the ground, I guess. And all of their kind of like desperation moves to kind of be like, yo, check it out, maybe there is progress, hey, check it out, we got a wacky inventor girl with huge boobs, that's something, come on, read it, that's something. All of those felt very lame, very forced, without really any intent or goal, but just kind of swinging for the fences. This one, they shifted gears into, shit, we're getting canceled, let's just do all of the plot now. Which to me, I think is actually the worst move in this scenario than just sort of letting it fade out with, nothing much has changed, but their wacky adventures will continue. I think that would actually leave a much better memory in readers' minds than having all of this like crazy, significant, dramatic twists and plot and action and stuff happening right at the end, and it just being so jarring and unpleasant that you're just like, oh god, like what was the point of all that? So yeah, they reveal all of the characters' like secret identities, all of the ambiguity of like, the assistant is a girl pretending to be a boy, and she's also the writer of the romance series he really likes, and she also has a secret crush on him. get that all out in the open in the most stupid anticlimactic way, where she's also a rich girl. Her family servant is like, I've decided this is too dangerous, so I'm gonna tell Sidcraft everything. Totally out of the blue. Then random violence and kidnapping and getting stabbed and whatever. Just boom, 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 boom. Then try to speedrun through all the progress with her. She gives him a kiss. Oh, I love you. Again, just let's get it out of the way. We planned on having a scene like this, so let's just do it. Let's just do it. And then throwing in a twist that I think they had planned to like really slow burn and really kind of build up to this gigantic earth-shattering twist that Inspector Flamberry, the other kind of major love interest, first off, it's like, oh, she had a secret childhood crush between her and Sid Kraft, and they're not aware of it. That just gets told to you, or told to Sid Kraft. Yep. Guess what? Yeah, that's that girl. Yep. Keep going. And then it's like, oh, I realize that you are the super shady, at the top of everything villain, Zero Kraft. Boom. Here's like 2 pieces of evidence. Boom. And I'm like, man, I bet they had planned that to be like 20 pieces of evidence. All these little hints. With 2 pieces of evidence, they didn't really make any sense. And then I think they had planned it to drop that bomb, have you super disoriented, and then like many chapters later reveal, no, she was actually hypnotized. And she has 2 personality states, Flamberry and Zero Kraft. And that explains a whole bunch of other weirdness. But no, they also give you that twist in this chapter. Stupid. I don't know. So yeah, lots of nonsense. At least it's exciting. At least it's... I want to see what happens because it's fucking crazy. But yeah, I think it's going to end soon. Maybe next month. I don't know what else they can do. Just checking my Discord messages quick here. Ha ha ha. Hi. Recording video. See you later. Yeah, I don't know. This one is, kind of had it. We'll give it a C. As I said, just this level of chaos and nonsense and desperation. It is interesting. And I have no idea where they're going to go from here, but I don't think they're going to go for much longer. Oh, I gotta sneeze now. It's allergy season for me. Oh. Okay. Oof. Oi. Okay. Shinobi Undercover. A series that I think sort of like Kill Blue doesn't really know what it wants to do, doesn't really know what it wants to be. This latest example is a quintessential one where it's like they go on this little beach trip because it's like a super secure beach where all of the public service ninja hang out. And this is going to be like both a chance to decompress from the last arc, but also a opportunity to train and stuff and prepare for all of the shady bad guys that we saw at the end of last month. And then they run into this very obnoxious higher rank ninja that knew Aoi in middle school, and he challenges them to a battle where the winner of the battle will get to guard her. They're gonna change the unit guarding her if the Unit 9 loses. And it's like, well, that's dumb. That doesn't really make any sense within the logic of the series. Because the whole idea is, oh, they blend in as her classmates, as her friends, and she has what she thinks is a normal life with these normal people, but actually they're all ninja. So why in the hell would they ever... Oh, I'm sorry, Roomba. It just asks for battery. You're charging. Why in the hell would they, like, swap out everybody? It makes no earthly sense. And it's a stupid thing to complain about. Oh, the premise of this manga isn't very realistic. But it's just like, can you at least, like, try a little bit? If you want to have an arc where it's like two different ninja squad fight each other and the stakes are really high, but it's not like they're trying to kill each other, you can't come up with anything better than that. And then, so he goes to hang out with Aoi, and then the other guy tags along. It's like this kind of third wheeling. He's trying to muscle him out and get with her. Very, very generic rom-com premise, but like not really explored in any sort of depth because it's also like ninja stuff and they have to stop a like thief. Just kind of like random shoehorned in ninja action that just makes it feel very unreal and uninteresting. It just kind of feels like it's either a competent but uninteresting ninja action series or just a very stupid rom-com that doesn't really have space to expand and to really get into the characters' feelings and any of that stuff because it also has to be a ninja action series. I don't know. And of course, the theme in these last few months is that the MC is recognizing that he has feelings for Aoi and isn't really sure how to deal with them. Which, again, is like, it's a good rom-com staple. And if you give space for that and you really explore the characters' feelings and take them seriously, it can be good. But it's just so compressed and weird and shoved into these other scenarios, and it's just basically so he's so imba and so powerful, he needs something to distract him and make him all warbly and wormy. I don't know. I don't know. It's fine. So they're gonna have their big ninja battle. Again, like Kill Blue, they have these stupid convoluted setups for a pretty basic actual arc, you know, the actual climax of it, the battle or whatever. So this is what you were doing this all for. Let's see how you pull it off. So we'll give it a B minus. Alright, let's talk about Witch Watch. At the end of last chapter, we had a major progression that Nico had recovered enough of her magic to age up to age 14. This is going to be probably the major focal point of the next few months. Starting off with her starting to have these very complicated feelings for Morihito because she's aged into the age where in her original childhood she started having a crush on him. Now she's back to that age and she's developing those feelings again, but of course it's very strange because of their new relationship where he's basically her dad. They do a lot of kind of like teenage shtick where she's just hypersensitive and moody and abrasive, and he doesn't really know how to deal with that. But then in the second chapter, they really focus in on, okay, here's why. It's because she doesn't know how to resolve these feelings. Let's really explore that. They use the spell where his feelings get represented by a flower, and his flower is like a bird in a nest, like a baby bird in a nest being fed by another bird. And they're like, oh, well, it's pretty clear what this means. Basically, she asks him point blank, like, how do you feel about me? And aren't you interested in romance anymore? I feel like I'm robbing you of all of these years of your life, taking care of me as a kid. And he talks about how, to him, this is just this amazing opportunity because Nico did not have a normal childhood, and now she finally gets a chance to experience all of the joys of childhood. And what's most important to him is just like protecting her and enabling that, and that sort of importance and that form of love for her. And I gotta say, this whole setup, this whole premise, going all the way back to the de-aging and just this whole idea of he's gonna have to care for her through all of these stages of her childhood, and these feelings of like, oh, now she's aged to the point where she's starting to have romantic feelings for him again, but obviously he doesn't reciprocate those. But then maybe he will once she gets old enough again. It's a little creepy. I don't think there's any two ways around it. But it's also like really sweet and really kind and really sentimental and full of such a wholesome love as well. Just Morihito's desire to give her another chance at childhood, one that he hopes will be more fulfilling and more rich and more full of all of the things that he thinks all children deserve. It was beautiful. It was very, very nice and beautiful. You got the creepiness, you got the sweetness. This is the manga classic. This is the whole medium in a nutshell. Which of those two things win out? I will say though, overall, I think it's a brilliant premise. Just in terms of the comedy scenarios they can set up because of this, and also in terms of having a rom-com where people expect some amount of progress between Morihito and Nico. Are they going to get together? They get closer and closer and closer. I think this is one of the most brilliant ways to hit a hard reset on that and delay it and push it off and say, hey, we got a good thing going. We're 200 chapters in. Let's beat the Sket Dance record. Let's have another big hit. So let's come up with a way to not only delay that kind of final climax, but also to just set up all these other premises and to have the genre of like taking care of a little kid, which is very popular now, all kind of downstream of Spy Family. Just so many great things that they came up with and all encapsulated in this one plot idea. So a little creepy, a little sweet, but mostly just very brilliant. It's funny though, my boyfriend is reading this series now, which I'm very happy about. It's one of my favorites in Jump right now, and I think he would. I knew he would like it, and he is really, really liking it. But he hasn't gotten to this point yet. He hasn't gotten to the de-aging yet. I'm really, really curious what he'll think of it. If the sweetness or the creepiness will win out for him. And then the latest chapter was about Nemu, her mom, who can shapeshift into other people, goes undercover as Morihito to spy on their daily life because she's just kind of curious. What is this household like that my daughter goes off to all the time? It's like really weirdly non-chaotic. It's very straightforward. It's mostly just kind of an exploration of Morihito's character. The whole time I was waiting for something like really wacky to happen, because basically she has to guess what Morihito is like and pretend to be him, because he's out of town. So she has to maintain this like illusion and stuff, and it's like the whole time, there's some misunderstandings and stuff, but it doesn't get that chaotic, it doesn't get that wacky, and then it resolves in such a clean anticlimactic way where she just gets away with it. And the real Morihito comes home, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, okay, you're back. We had a nice day today." I don't know. It was weird. It was fine, but it was weird. Not the kind of comedic high point that I expect from the series. So I'll give it an A+. Still really great stuff. Love this series. Love Sket Dance. I'm still reading through Sket Dance. I've got about 50 or 60 chapters left. Really, really enjoying it too. And then I'll read Astra Lost in Space after that, probably. Get through the whole Shinohara Sensei collection. Alright, now let's talk about Embers. This is another series that may not have long left. I saw people saying that they felt like they were kind of just speedrunning to get to the battle with the big rival school. Which is kind of the only major thing that's been sort of set up that they need to pay off, is going up against this big antagonist character. And like I've said before, this is clearly a very down-the-middle sports series that is mostly focused on just depicting sport action. All of the other stuff is kind of auxiliary. It's just a pretense to get to the sport, and that's fine. That's totally fine with me. I love series like that. A lot of my favorite sports series are like that. So in this month, we had one final chapter kind of preparing for the big battle. And they spent a little longer than I anticipated on this pretense, on building up motivations for the characters. And I liked it. I think they actually did quite a good job here. Again, nothing super mind blowing, nothing that I've never seen before, but well expressed. And one thing that it really stuck with me that I really liked was like lamenting that last year they lost so soon, and they had to stop playing soccer so early in the summer, and that the rest of the summer just kind of felt empty. And here going, don't you want a long summer? Really focusing on like, well, what do you get when you win? You get the chance to keep playing, and isn't that what you want more than anything? A long summer of playing. I was like, all right, that got me a little pumped. I liked that. I really liked how that was expressed. And then, of course, we get into the actual soccer game itself. All of the strategy, counter strategy, getting into soccer terminology, talking about just abstractly the idea of man-on-man defense, what the strengths and weaknesses. Of course, like most sports shonen, the X factor here is our protagonist and his superpower of being able to block and steal the ball from pretty much anybody. Really solid stuff. Nothing crazy, nothing too interesting. The way it was depicted is pretty straightforward as well. But, you know, they did all the right things. They had the stuff that I like about sports shonen. The tactics, seeing stuff work or not work, and then revising and learning. Just that kind of like game level, you know, I really, really enjoy. And soccer is a great sport for that sort of stuff because it's all about positioning and then head-to-head battles. And you know, it's the reason that Blue Lock, which is a series that really only operates in this mode of like soccer tactics and stuff, has exceeded for so long. I could talk about Blue Lock a lot. There's things I like, things I don't like, but whatever. It's an interesting counterpoint here. Yeah, good stuff. And then of course it's like, oh, we're beating the evil team, yay! But the really evil guy hasn't started playing yet. Oh, so he comes in the latest chapter. Again, pretty cut and dry, just kind of playing out the way you would expect that scene to go. Steps in and immediately things change. They score 2 goals. They retake the lead. And it's like, everything we've done so far is insufficient. The MC has to kind of level up again because the bad guy just blew right past him. His undefeatable blocking ability was, in fact, defeated. So now he has to evolve in the course of the match and do better. Very, very cliche sports shonen stuff, but cliche for a reason. These are compelling stories, and as long as they can kind of keep up interesting soccer tactics in parallel with that it's not just kind of super power level of willpower or exertion, but he instead actually like learns something on the technique level, or they have some sort of strategic insight or something. Great. That's a great little arc. Learn that, beat the bad team. Maybe the series ends. I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of hitting its stride now. And I like having this sort of very down the middle, very basic in a positive way sports series in Jump. So I hope it keeps going. But we'll see. Give it a B+. Alright, let's talk about One Piece. Only 2 chapters this week. Again, you can go watch the videos on each of them if you want more in-depth discussion. We are hitting a pretty major climax of the Elbaf arc. Again, I talk about this all the time in the videos. The structure of this arc in general is a little confusing to me. It's still quite mysterious. I still don't know exactly where it's going to go. It feels like there's still a lot kind of lurking in the shadows that hasn't been brought into the spotlight. And probably the strongest proof of that is that everything that has been brought into the spotlight is hitting that super climax level. There's not too much more that can be done with the plot elements we have, despite the fact that there's still so many plot threads to resolve in this arc. Really sad stuff this month. Some brutal scenes of child hostages being willing to sacrifice their own life so that they don't have to submit to the world government and burn their library, which is full of ancient wisdom and, of course, the books that the people of Ohara sacrificed themselves to preserve. You really feel the impact of that loss, not just because you care about characters that care about that, but on like a very visceral storytelling level. There is lore about the series in those books. If we have free and unfettered access to the library of Elbaf, we're going to learn so much about the world of One Piece, which, you know, for all of us long-running One Piece fans, is one of the most exciting prospects in the world. To learn about the true history of the world of One Piece. What happened in the Void Century? What is the Will of D? Maybe those are contained in that library, and then we had to watch it go up in flame. So very viscerally painful and uncomfortable, and with such an ambiguity too. Like, I was talking about this in the video I made yesterday. Like, most of the kind of plot action in One Piece outside of the fights has a certain logic to it, where the outcome of events is motivated by just character behavior and its place in the storyline, and you kind of know when a character is making like a desperate act to save something, whether or not it's gonna work, whether or not it would make sense to work. But Elbaf, everything that's happened lately falls outside of that logic, outside of that structure. I think in part just because the arc itself has such an ambiguous structure and has so many kind of mysteries within it still. And also just because I don't know, is this going to be an emotional nadir of the story? Is everything just going to go from bad to worse to worse to worse? Or are we going to at some point turn the tide and have cathartic moments of victory? I genuinely don't know. Like, that whole superstructure is still unclear. And so it's very high tension chapters, man. It's crazy. And then all this stuff with Gunko's past, and how it intersects with Brook's past, realizing how mysterious Brook's past still is. We've seen little spotlights of his relationship with Laboon, and then, of course, we know what happened with him in the time skip, becoming a world-famous musician and everything. But then somewhere in there, Gunko slots in as well. It seems like at some point she was like brainwashed, or maybe reprogrammed on some cyborg level. And then at the end, Imu, one of the end game bosses, perhaps the final boss of One Piece, period, possesses her body, and vows to raise Elbaf to the ground in a fit of frustration that their plan of getting the giants on their side wasn't progressing fast enough. It's like, shit's crazy, man. I couldn't have seen that coming in a million years. And I don't know what it means for the entire structure of the arc. Certainly seems like things are going from bad to worse, but like, to what end? Imu does not seem like a super rational type, you know? So instead of trying to persuade the giants to join their side through kidnapping and subterfuge and stuff, instead it's going to be like she just starts massacring everybody. I don't know. It's intense. It's scary. But I will say, it's like great, but I'm only giving it an S-. Only. Because I think One Piece is at its best when it's not locked into this kind of mode for a prolonged period. And I just feel like this arc is getting kind of out of hand in a sense, insofar as this climax of battling the Holy Knights has become so emotional and so intense and so tragic that it's hard to imagine shifting gears out of it into learning about the history of Loki and Hadruden, for example, or exploring the island and having fun and having another banquet or whatever. It's just sort of like careening so hard in one direction, which again is intense and enthralling and exciting and full of the anxious ambiguity, but isn't exactly what I love One Piece best for. So, S-, still a very good score. It's gotten some S-s in the past. It's not like it's an unprecedentedly low score for One Piece. But I do want to call out something unprecedented that happened this month. One Piece was not among the highest rated series. There was a series with a higher grade than One Piece, which was Roboco. Historic. Among my videos, which I've done for a little over a year now. This is truly a historic moment. Okay, next let's talk about Kagurabachi. This has been really cooking for me lately. I just love the character of Samurai, pictured here on the cover. I think he's so badass. I think he's so well realized and exciting. And this kind of prolonged battle against him and also against the terrorist dudes. Really exciting to me. I think the pacing is great. The level of storyline complexity is great. And then in this month, they did something that I, on paper, would have really disliked, where they suddenly swing the camera over to an entirely different scene. And we find out that the whole thing with Samurai was actually part of a much larger plot to use that as sort of a distraction and just sort of general chaos creator, while really their goal was to infiltrate the Kamunabi headquarters. So now we're back at Kamunabi headquarters. All of our major characters, besides what's-his-face that can use the storehouse, Hakuri, are all fighting Samurai. So now it's kind of like, oh, like what? This is a whole other thing going on. Suddenly we get introduced to a bunch of like high-level Kamunabi fighters. They're finally doing like a here's some dudes thing. Do you remember way back when Kagurabachi started? I talked about it a lot in the context of like, it seems like they're really hedging their bets on how long this will run. And they kind of did a tentative here's some dudes. You know what I'm talking about, the here's some dudes scene where they show like a round table of guys posted up like this, and they have all sorts of crazy appearances and stuff, and it's like, it's the elite squad. You're gonna see all these guys fight. They did that, and then like 2 chapters later, they had all of them get wiped out. Do you remember that? That was crazy. That was like, to me, one of the most blatant kind of like treading or testing the waters, going, hey, we got a bunch of characters. You want this to be a long series? Oh, no, just kidding. That's fine. We can wrap this up. We don't need them. And I don't think they've really done here's some dudes scene since, but they did it. And that's exciting to me, because I quite like the series. I think this could be a long-running one. This could be a new pillar of Battle Shonen and Jump. So yeah, we got some dudes on the good guy team, on the Kabunabi team. And then the bad guys also got some dudes that we hadn't seen before. They start raiding. There's this whole thing about the structure of their headquarters. I was like, yep, this reminds me a lot of Tokyo Ghoul, actually. Just in how it was set up and how the personalities of the different people involved are set up, and just the structure of they're going to be fighting in all these different chambers and stuff. Sure. And then in the latest chapter, there was a pretty crazy twist that I found quite compelling, where it turns out that the main force they had sent to the Kabunabi headquarters was also a distraction to lure out the strong Kabunabi fighters. And instead, their real plan is that they had, through an unspecified period of time, probably like months or even years, had built up all of these like blackmail connections. I guess blackmail isn't the right word. Vulnerabilities in the various kind of rank and file soldiers in Kabunabi, going, hey, we know where your daughter lives, we know where your wife lives, do what we say on a certain date, you're like a sleeper cell, we're gonna tell you to start killing everybody around you, and you have to do it or else we're gonna kill your daughter. And it's like, they might have like hundreds of these planted in there, and they give the signal and they all start revolting, and it's carnage everywhere. And I was like, ooh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty compelling and intense and tragic, and it feels like the rug got pulled out from under you. I also thought, it's kind of stupid. Because imagine you're working for something like the Kabunabi, which is like, in the real world, it would be kind of like the FBI or something, or the Department of National Defense, or the Army, or I don't know, whatever. And then somebody comes to you and is like, we know where your daughter lives. I would go to my boss and be like, hey, some dude is threatening me. can I make sure we get to the bottom of this and make sure my daughter is safe? Can we like relocate her and put her in a safe house and stuff? And they're like, yep, absolutely, that's something we do. We don't want people to just have these vulnerabilities that would make them turncoats. So we have a process in place to prevent this exact sort of thing. Oh, great. I'm so glad I came and told you instead of just harboring this secret mission for years and deciding to, I don't know, like maybe I'm misunderstanding the situation. Maybe it wasn't this sort of long-term plan, but something they did very ad hoc and suddenly that made them feel like their daughters were in much more danger. I keep saying daughters. I think it's like a variety, but whatever. I don't know. That part struck me as kind of like, what? You're telling me a shadowy figure contacted you and said you have to kill everybody else you work with at a moment's notice. You'll probably die too. But if you don't, we're going to kill your daughter. And you're like, yep. Okay, boss, I'll wait for the signal. And there was like no other recourse he could have taken, even though you are like an elite soldier in training in the most powerful, like, magical military force in Japan. Your only recourse was to just go, okay. I don't know. But it was still good. Like, I think you can poke that little plot hole in it and go, it doesn't make much sense. But the effect was good, and the twist was good, and the feeling of tension that just ramped up when you realized that was happening. That was all good. So I think it's worth it. Like, when you think about plot holes and stuff, I don't think they're irredeemable sins, but rather it's like, okay, well, what did you get out of that leap of logic? And here I think they got something good. So anyways, good month, good arc, good stuff, good fights, good twists. I don't know how we're going to kind of balance, because the stuff with Samura isn't over. How long are we going to spend at Kamanabi headquarters before we go back to the stuff with Samura? Because a lot of stuff is happening at Kamanabi headquarters. Are these two plot lines going to, like, weave back together? That was like a T-Ghoul classic. Is like, Kaneki would be out fighting somebody, then simultaneously there would be some big raid on, like, a ghoul headquarters, and then somehow those two things would kind of blend together because they're happening, like, spatially nearby. And that got really, really keyno. Here, it's like they're having both of those kind of two T-Ghoul arcs, but happening, like, way far apart. So it's unclear to me, like, how this is all going to come back together. But we'll see. Okay. Next, let's talk about the Elusive Samurai. Just check my phone again quick. Spaghetti and meatballs. What was I going to check? So the big plot line is battling against the Kono brothers, these retainers of Takauji that were also kind of an aspiring noble family that wanted to run the shogunate from behind the scenes, much like the Hojo were doing. So now they want to rub them out to kind of continue dismantling Takauji's power. They have this big ambush planned, completely backfires. I like the way this was depicted, that it's like the Kono brothers had a lot more resources than our squad anticipated. Suddenly they're fighting against Tengu. That plot element comes back, and they're overwhelmed. They get pincer attacked. It felt like a good inversion of many of the scenarios up to this point, where our heroes are like the underdogs and they're just this sort of small force. And they're like, we know we're going to get attacked by this larger army, so let's come up with a whole bunch of tactics to turn the tides. This time it's like our heroes are the large army. They're the ones that just kind of want to come through and roll them. And instead, they're getting hit with the tactics and the inversions and the surprises. And I think it's, like, well represented in just the overall kind of, like, flow of battle. The difference, of course, though, is that where our heroes would often stage a miraculous victory, the Konos here are losing either way. But just really solid battle action. You know, one of the pillars of the series is just depicting this kind of wartime combat. Lots and lots of melee, chaotic, people fighting each other, and then these kind of like moments of sudden serendipity of two people colliding on the battlefield that have some sort of fateful reunion. You know, like the Tengu that turned traitor and joined their squad, meets up with the head Tengu that she used to serve under, and I don't know, yeah, good stuff. The latest chapter especially was very good for me, where... Oh, I thought I had to sneeze. Basically, they focus on this idea of the parallel between the Kono and the Hojo. And they do a lot of like historical analysis. This is another pillar of the series where the narration bubbles start popping up, talking about how these families have been depicted in accounts ever since the contemporary, and what can we learn from them? How did their ambitions differ? Why did one succeed while the other failed? And blah, 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 blah. Great line where one of the Kono brothers says, like, you know, we're both going to be remembered as horrible people. Basically, like, just this moment of kind of, like, self-awareness in the grand picture of history. And yeah, this very kind of tragic moment where the Kono brother is giving his last words, and just this feeling of like the gigantic scope of history, which I think is one of the strongest feelings that the series evokes. Opening up and realizing just these small kind of echoing moments, repeating like poetry in this grand tapestry of internal war in Japan, and having this sudden perspective of like, someday I'll be meeting that same fate. I've brought many others to that fate. I don't know. So yeah, really good stuff. Moments of poetic brilliance. The Kono brothers battle, which at first I wasn't really that excited for. It felt kind of like a formality, you know. They have to go through all these actual historic moments and depict them. And I was like, maybe this could be done sort of like off screen, because it felt like we had a lot of momentum going into stuff with Takauji himself, and now it's just kind of like this distraction, this minor story involving the brothers. But they brought it to fruition in a really nice way. They seized the opportunity to kind of bring these moments to bear, and a lot of good character resolutions and stuff too. But now it seems like we're probably going to be back full steam ahead on more direct conflict with Takauji, which, again, it's like, I could look up Wikipedia and find out, but I feel like means we're heading for the super climax of this series. So we'll see. But it's not going to be anytime soon. It's sort of like Blue Box or Sakamoto, where it's like, I can kind of see that there's a finite list of stuff left to do, and it seems to be in a mode where nothing more than that finite list is going to happen. There's not going to be some bonus extension. And so it's like, we're in the end game, but I don't think it's anytime soon. That's a long list, albeit finite, of things to happen. We'll give it an A. Solid stuff. Moving along to Akane-banashi. Really, really interesting stuff going on here. Last month, she was challenged to perform without laughs, to do a routine that succeeds without getting laughs from the audience. And she starts this month flabbergasted by this request, pissed off even, because she can't understand, A, how is that even possible when the vast majority of Rakugo go for laughs at least some of the time, even your most kind of stories of heartache and pity and sadness and tragedy do have some comedic elements. And she herself is, of course, the comedy master. Like, she's all about that kind of loose improvisational style, responding to the audience to build up escalating laughter. She mostly focuses on comedic stories. And I really like that often in these sorts of series, when there's like this unreasonable, unfathomable request, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, you see both the purpose and you also see kind of the pathway to it, and you're just sort of waiting for the character to catch up. Not so here. Like, to me, I totally get the value of Akane learning to do sad stories and stuff, inheriting her father's specialty in a lot of ways, incorporating that into her repertoire. Certainly something that she had to do if she was going to advance to the higher ranks of Rakugoka. But the brutality of saying, okay, no laughs at all, instead of kind of expanding from what you're good at and taking in more technique and stuff, it really is like flabbergasting. Like it's unclear what purpose that could serve. It doesn't seem like the way to practice. Moreover, I had no clue how she was gonna do it. Like, it felt like way too brutal of a restriction on her. But she does have a breakthrough, inevitably. She runs into a minor character from around the start of the story, another Rakugoka, who's another kind of comedy specialist. She talks to him about this whole dilemma she's facing. Then she's talking to a chef. The chef is describing how when he comes up with a new dish, it's not because he thinks there's a demand for it from the audience. It's not because he thinks the audience wants this particular thing, but he wants to prove to his customers that they do want this by making it so good or whatever. And hearing this, she has a breakthrough. And I was like, okay, I can kind of see the pieces coming together, but I still don't get it. How is she going to do it without laughs? What the hell is she going to do? It's got to be something totally different than either her typical shtick or just aping the shtick of somebody else. Like, she basically already wrote both of those off as impossible to win without laughs in this competition. But she has some sort of insight. She has some third path. And again, it's like most of the time in series like this, and I don't think this is any fault of series that are written like this. Moreover, I think it's often a strength of the writing that you can see it coming, that, they've thematically built it up, that you're like, oh, okay, this is the next lesson she's going to learn. I have no idea. It's so exciting. I have no idea. Then in the latest chapter, we get into the lobby of this competition. Hikaru and Karashi, her two main rivals, are there. There's all this tension, and then Akane shows up, breaks the tension, jokes around with them. And here we go. The competition will begin probably in the next chapter. Probably by the end of next month, we'll be through it. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens. I love this series. I actually just recently bought pretty much all of the volumes in English. I was at Anime North, Canada's biggest anime convention. They always have an amazing manga sale. The store, The Beguiling, which has their actual physical store in Toronto, sets up a booth at Anime North and sells manga at this amazing rate. So I bought 34 volumes of manga, including all of the Akane I could get my hands on. Just love, 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 love this series. Given an S- for the month. Really good stuff. Again, the highs of this series are when she's actually performing, or when anyone's performing, or in the true kind of emotional climaxes. This mode of speculation, of desperately wanting to know what the hell is she going to do, certainly has its charms in its own way, and I think is leading to a truly unforgettable performance. Okay, let's talk about Sakamoto Days. We are in the thick of what seems like the final arc, although it might be more of a final saga with all of the things that have to happen in this arc. Starting with this whole insane, the Japanese assassin organization taking over the government of Japan and issuing people guns that they can legally shoot at each other. This is the kind of opening salvo of this final all good guys versus all bad guys war. We learn that Sakamoto is traumatized by seeing his beloved store explode and believing briefly that his wife and daughter are dead. He can't fight. He's kind of at his wit's end, which again I think is a good setup for this final arc. Our hero is at a low point. But we knew he was kind of training right up until this point. So at some point he's gonna get his mojo back and then be stronger than ever before, which is hype. Kashima, do you remember Kashima? He used to be one of the villain's subordinates with the deer head, and eventually he went from like a genuinely kind of freaky, scary adversary to a dude that helps them out and is strapped to like a toy tank. Great to see him again. Shin using his ESP powers to implant ideas into people's heads, using a radio tower to amplify them, and broadcasting a signal of just fire your gun into the ground, trying to use that to save people. That I thought was great. A cool escalation and utilization of his power. Obviously, he's getting strong in fighting as well. I'm sure he'll have a 1v1 focused fight somewhere in this big mega arc. But I also like that, there's this sort of alternative utilization of his power that they're exploring and taking to new heights. So then they try to take that even further by broadcasting it through Tokyo Tower all over Japan. But Tokyo Tower gets blown up by the bad guys in an effort to stop that. Awesome action set piece there of Tokyo Tower exploding and these fighter jets flying into it. Crazy. And then, in miraculous simultaneity, the hackers come through and remotely disable all of the guns. But it's like, the signal will get back online and reactivate the guns. But coincidentally, that's also being broadcast from Tokyo Tower. So when they blew it up, they inadvertently foiled their own plan. Fantastic. So now the whole gun chaos thing is over, which I have sort of mixed feelings about, because I like that premise a lot. I like this idea of like random PvP action happening all over Japan. It felt depraved. It felt scary. Seeing all these little vignettes of people going through kind of like Michael Douglas falling down moments was impressive and exciting and just kind of like a fun storytelling mode. At the same time, I guess they've kind of done as much as they could with it. It would be weird to just have chapter after chapter after chapter throwing in those little vignettes. And the power scaling of the series is such that like having random guns around, not really a big deal. Guns are not that strong in the world of Sakamoto anymore. So it's like there wasn't too much like plot significance that could emerge from that. So I'm still really happy they did it. I felt like a great way to show this sort of paradigm shift of the JAA being in charge, how terrifying that is, the chaos that they could wreak over the country. I think it's like a perfect transition into this feeling of kind of an endgame arc. But I guess, yeah, they've done enough with it. I don't know. I wish there was even more. I think it's just such a clever premise that I wish there was even more. It's just like in Kill Blue when the villain was like, I'm going to legalize guns in Japan. And that was their big villainous scheme. And I was like, that's sick. That's like, what a great premise. What a great idea. They didn't do anything with that. That was like months and months and months ago. They haven't done anything with it. Here, at least they did something. Even if it didn't last that long. Okay. And then in the latest chapter, sick nasty fight. Shin fighting against X. Trying to get away from him. Using the ejector seat from a fighter pilot jet that had crashed into Tokyo Tower to launch himself away. That was really cool. They keep fighting on the way down and land in an aquarium where X has this brief moment of memory from his previous life. But then there's this whole thing about like X has the personality of Mr. Takamura, but Mr. Takamura only responds to bloodlust. He only fights if he can trigger, if he feels that somebody is like threatening him. So that's why Shin was just really focused on running away, as he did not want to trigger that feeling at all. But then a passing shark triggers it. I was like, oh, that's Kino. And just in general, fighting in an aquarium, they just always impress me with these ad hoc battlegrounds that have all of these awesome set pieces, this just kind of unique visual language for each fight. And I'm like, aquarium, that's awesome. He's going to be throwing starfish like ninja stars. He's going to grab an electric eel and go bzzz. I don't know. Maybe not any of that. But yeah, sick nasty stuff. I'm giving an A+ for the month. Really solid. Like I said, a little disappointed in the ultimate resolution of the everybody gets a gun plotline. Felt a little too clean, a little too sudden. But it served its purpose, and I'm very excited for what's next. Okay, finally, we have Nice Prison. We started by talking about one of the most promising debuts of 2025. This is one of the least promising debuts of 2025. I don't know. I love gag comedy. I just gave Roboco the highest grade of the month. But this just ain't hitting for me. I don't know. It seems like they're trying to have a little bit more of a plot. Like, instead of just kind of, here's a scenario. Guess what? Here's that scenario happening in prison. Then here's a bunch of wacky stuff happening, and the one girl Tsukomi's it. They're like actually kind of doing multi-chapter plot line and setting up threats and stuff. Trying to be more like Bobo Bobo maybe, which kind of operated in that mode where it was a very wacky gag comedy with a lot of Tsukomiing and stuff, but you built up these like substantial arcs and you had like an ongoing plot line around a threat and stuff. And it's like, that's fine, and I think you can do that very well. I do like Bobo. Not that I've read all of it, but I've liked what I've read. I think that's all good, but you gotta make the jokes funny. And just none of the jokes are that funny to me. Like, the setups are fine. The Tsukomiing is fine. It's not sket dance level, but it's fine. But the actual substance of the joke, the thing that you've, the setup is always, you're telling me there's illegal mascot characters imprisoned in this ward? What could an illegal mascot character be? And you see it. What the heck? What kind of child would ever want to see a anthropomorphized package of tuna? And it's like, is that funny? Is that the funniest illegal mascot you could come up with? Could do better. You could do better. I don't know. It's not like offensively bad. And I am intrigued by the idea of them actually building up kind of like a plot line and doing world building and power scaling in that sort of gag manga format. We haven't seen that in a while. But you gotta have some funny jokes. You gotta have something. You gotta have like either likable characters or funny jokes or just an inherently funny premise or good art. And Roboco's got all of those. This doesn't have much. I'm giving it a B-. Again, it's not offensively bad. It's just not funny enough. And if you're a gag manga series, you gotta frickin' get with the laughs. You gotta make them laugh. Everybody wants to laugh. Okay. This was our tier list last month with the poop emoji E grade. Well earned. This is our tier list this month. As I said, One Piece for the very first time not in the top bracket. Kind of crazy. But overall, the magazine's doing well. We have most of our series in the A rank. Roboco hitting brand new heights. Really, really fantastic stuff. And, a nice assemblage of other series that I don't really mind. We'll see. We'll see what the hell happens. It's been good. See you next time. Bye-bye.